welcome to Too Deep, Hokies Under the Influence. And it is Virginia Tech. This isn't some rinky-dink-ass program.
Come on, JC.
We're going to put this old guy in the grade. We'll go over some of the stats really there. 60%, 11.
It's an 11 game.
Welcome to Too Deep, Hokies Under the Influence, a Sons of Saturday podcast. I'm your host, Pete B., and I've got my co-host here, Sam Jesse. You just heard our intro video. Some of you guys have been commenting on it on the last couple episodes, and I just used the StreamYard availability to add that to the YouTube. So hopefully that all worked and wasn't too loud for your eardrums.
It was pretty loud.
It was pretty loud.
It's pretty sick too.
We'll work on that. But the intro looks good, and we're happy to be here tonight. I am back from vacation, Sam. It was I appreciate you holding things down, but having that being away during media days, like I felt like a piece of me was missing.
You didn't miss too much. And yeah, we did hold it down. Shout out to Brett and Robert, who always do a great job hopping on. Also, shout out to Tyler Budge, who, selflessly came on and gave me an hour of his time. He was great. And so, yeah, it was a great time. I hope you enjoyed your vacation. You were in Alaska, right?
We did the cruise up to Alaska, left out of Vancouver, finished in Whittier, and took a bus to Anchorage to fly home. Great trip. Saw a bunch of different ports of call. Hard to see that area of the country unless you're on a boat. Like you can't drive to Juneau. Like you need to fly there or take a boat there because there are no roads, despite it being the capital. Like you can't get there easily. And so that was really cool. Did some excursions, did some hiking, some biking. It was awesome.
See any bears?
I did not personally see a bear. Some people saw a bear like on the coastline, or maybe when they were here or there, like they saw one on one of their hikes or something. I didn't really want to see one on a hike. I would have seen it from the shore. That would have been nice.
I'm wearing my Tooth and Claw shirt. If you know, you know. If you don't, look them up. They're one of my favorite podcasts for the just in case you did have a story about running into a bear in Alaska.
Yeah, I saw a lot of other wildlife, including tons of salmon and a banana slug, which is apparently a thing up there. But yeah, we saw bald eagles everywhere. That was sweet. So Great trip. Drank a lot of beer and bought a lot of cooler stickers, which I might share my collection. I might have gone overboard with the stickers, but might have gone overboard with the beer as well. But it was a great trip. Why don't you kick off this episode where we're going to talk about Media Day and the updated roster? Give us a cheers, Sam.
My cheers is to at least some bit, and I'm sensing this in my group chat. I'm sensing it on the timeline a little bit sense of positivity around the Hokies, because I think as we're going to talk about here, it's really hard to take media days and grab anything from them. But there is a sense of like quiet confidence we're getting out of Virginia Tech this offseason. And I'm feeling a lot more people start to be a little positive about it. Kairen looks great. Kelvin Gilliam sounded like he was, about to make everybody in that room run through a brick wall. He was awesome. So cheers to just a positive media day and positive vibes heading into fall camp here in a couple weeks.
Cheers to that, buddy. Yeah, some of the guys who are maybe on the more negative side in the Sons of Saturday group chat are turning a corner. You can tell tell we're in July.
There's just the flip side of the same quesadilla, homie. It's just which day do you wake up? And it is funny because like nothing has happened at all, like not even a practice. And it's just kind of how college football works. It's the nature of having the longest offseason of major sports.
Everybody is getting excited. And it's not just our fan base. You can see the comments on our South Carolina video from the Gamecocks fans. And like, they are 100% all in. I don't blame them for it. They had a great year last year. I can only imagine if we had that kind of year, how we'd be feeling.
I actually want to congratulate South Carolina on the 2025-26 national title. I want to be the first to congratulate them. It's a great achievement, first in school history for them. So congratulations.
Yeah, they've earned the Kirk Herbstreit holding the Coors Light hype train summer image because they are on that hype train.
Yeah,
and
deservedly so.
We talked a lot about that matchup a couple episodes ago. It's doing great. Go out there and check it out if you haven't already. But you did do the interview with CF Budge, which was cool. Billy just did one with Pick Six Preview. So we're getting into the heart of this. So make sure you're checking out those episodes. Billy also recorded like 100 ACC Media Day recaps last week. I'm kidding, but he did one after every day, and he did a Hokies one. And so lots of coverage on Media Days from him and Will Trent. They both did an awesome job covering it for Sons of Saturday. Everyone was down there, dude. I don't know if you noticed that, like the 247 guys, Colby, D. Cunha, Will Stewart, like, that whole team, Chris Coleman.
That's one of the pros of having it in Charlotte. Not only is it very central and it's a large population hub for a lot of ACC schools, but it's also like an airport hub.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to get to. So I think it is just a great central location for the ACC to have championships, to have media days, things like that.
So we are putting off our opponent preview, the last one we're going to do, until next week. I need to get my feet back under me a bit before we preview our ACC slate. Sam and I are going to do that. So tonight is going to be the ACC kickoff, what we kind of learned from that. And then the new roster got updated with some heights and weights and numbers. And you know how much I love that, Sam. And so we're going to dive into that in this episode as well. So stick around for that. First, a couple news and notes. NC Central's coach, Oliver, I believe his last name was, accuses Virginia Tech of tampering. This was kind of an interesting story that came out at the end of last week, but to me, it seemed like a big nothing burger.
It was so like quintessential social media in 2025, where if you click on the article, there was nothing there. I think he just got kind of fired up before game and saw a Virginia Tech, an unnamed, of course unnamed, Virginia Tech assistant who was visiting the associate AD at North Carolina Central, which is a school in Durham, North Carolina, to, if you want to start connecting some dots at home. And he got pretty upset about that. He had to have multiple coaches on the staff and multiple people like from the football program, I guess, come to calm him down before the game. They had a really good running back. NC Central did. He ended up going to UVA for $400,000. And so 0.1, 400K must not be, I mean, it's not that good if it's only 400K.
I mean, but that's also a lot for like,
it's a lot for an FCS
really
running
heard
back,
of very much of. Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, I hadn't heard of him, but best of luck to that guy. Congratulations. And yeah, there's not a lot here, man.
No, it sounded like the reaction was mainly like that guy was off his rocker. Like not our staffer, but like that coach got like overly fired up about this.
Yeah, he'll be rooting for UVA during the Commonwealth Cup. So that's a real, we'll take that into account when we do our preview pod.
That's right. And we're going to do this real quickly, but regarding NIL, Sam, I don't know if you saw, but there's already issues with the House case. There's a couple of lawsuits about collectives and whether they can still pay players in addition to the rev share. And basically, yes, they can. At least that's it for now. And then our president came out, and I mean President Trump came out and saved college sports with his executive order saying that third parties cannot pay players directly or do pay for play. And so maybe that fixes everything. I highly doubt that. But it already seems like there's some holes in whatever the House case enforcement was going to be.
Yeah, the Donald J. Trump Saves College Sports executive order, which is the actual name of it.
Yes, it is.
Doesn't really do anything. First off, that's really not how executive orders work. And then secondly, all it does is just asks people really nicely to define things. And I just don't, I don't see how this gets any cleaner at this point. I thought there was a small window of time that things could have gotten done and could have gotten agreed upon. And it just does not seem like it's going to happen. So I think the student athlete employment ship has all but sailed for a little while. I think the NIL free marketplace, do whatever you want, has somewhat sailed, but is hanging on by a thread. I think we are at this really weird time where players are getting paid to play while also getting paid to do marketing. And whatever that fine line is has not been defined. And I don't think it's going to be defined for quite some time.
Especially when you consider that them playing is marketing. It's a very strange thing that we discussed with Olivia in depth a couple months ago. Although some of what we discussed has now been not overturned, but just there's going to be more and more litigation. And essentially, it just seems like collectives are still going to pay players on top of revenue sharing, and that it's not going to be governed as strictly as they were hoping for.
Yeah, it seems like you're going to have, and I might be off base on this, but from everything that I've ingested on it, is it will be somewhat it is somewhat more controlled than it was the last few years, but not totally controlled.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to pay a player X amount of dollars, that player is going to get X amount of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, there is no salary cap. They're
going to find a way to get
paid,
them.
They're going to get paid. Yes. And that's what it is. And the reality though, is the players who are, your Arch Mannings, your Caleb Downs, those kind of players, Drew Aller, they're going to get those marketing deals anyways, because of the
big guys are going to get it. It's really just about, we kind of thought the collectives were getting folded into the university, so to speak, and that money would all kind of go to the 20 million. Well, not quite. It's really going to be like on top of the 20 million, or maybe some of it will go to that. And so it's very hard to say right now.
Do you think this maybe helps programs like Virginia Tech that are well funded internally, but they're not swimming in money, that they can now rely a little bit on someone outside the athletic department to do some of this fundraising? Because to me, I never thought Virginia Tech would be totally comfortable financially only giving like 15 million to football.
It doesn't really,
and the rest to basketball. I never thought it was going to work for a program like Virginia Tech, like NC State, like, name said program here.
Teams that are trying to be good at both sports.
Yeah. That's
and that I didn't know that's exactly where you were going with that. Like, yeah, I always thought that didn't make any sense, that we have to divide up the money when other basketball only schools don't have to divide up the money. But I always thought that Triumph, Hokie Way, Mahul, and the university were always going to have to work together to get to that 20 mil mark. I never thought that it was going to be like 20 mil plus maybe Triumph. No, I always thought that our NIL collective, it was going to be all hands on deck to get to the maximum amount anyway. And however, whatever pocketbook that comes from was all going to be like semantics.
Yeah, I think that feels where it's kind of at right now, is these players are going to get paid. They're going to get paid handsomely. And if you want to drop a bag on a women's basketball player, by all means, you can still do that. And
it seems like it right now. It seems like it. All right. Before we get to our main topics, just a couple housekeeping things. Saturday in the South, 3 to 11 p.m. down in Atlanta, the day before the game. We're going to be at Park Tavern. 3 to 6 is the open bar that you can get a ticket for. All the Sons of Saturday are going to be there. It's going to be a blast. Go to the Suns website, sonsofsaturday.com. There's an article on there. You can find tickets for the event, as well as hotel information. There's availability at the Spring Hill Suites. We're trying to fill her up. So if you need a hotel for Atlanta, hit up that link on the Sons of Saturday website. It's a really good rate. And I have the link in this description of this video as well. So you'll be able to find it easily. But Saturday in the South, 3 to 6 p.m. open bar, and then bands, football all day long the day before the Virginia Tech South Carolina game. It's going to be awesome down in Atlanta. You can also find our merch at theswvashop.com. Just type in Too Deep in their search bar. Our hoodies and our t-shirts will pop right up. And make sure to like this video and subscribe on Sons of Saturday on YouTube. The other thing I wanted to make people aware of is like this, if you'd have found us on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts. So make sure you're following us on Spotify. Those follows help us out, as well as, if you want to listen to audio only and not have to deal with the video, you can find us on there. We try to explain things that you don't really need the video. It just, if we have a slide or something, obviously you're getting a little bit more on YouTube, and you get to see our faces, Sam, which may be a plus or a minus depending on who you are.
Yeah, depending on the day.
Yeah. All right, ACC Kickoff. Let's start, before we get into who said what, let's just put up the Suns ACC poll, Sam, because this is something you put together last week. And we had, 15 guys vote on this about?
We got up to 19.
Okay. Yeah. So you can
Yeah.
see it on your screen. One of the benefits of watching on YouTube, Clemson is number 1 and the predicted champion for the ACC, according to our guys. Miami number 2, SMU number 3, and Louisville number 4. That makes sense to me. I mean, I think
Yeah.
I have Miami. I'm pretty high on Miami. Others are higher on SMU. What jumps out to you at the top before we get to where we put Virginia Tech?
I think it is those 2 through 4 were the ones that were most up in the air, and it was kind of a crapshoot as to which one would end up in that second spot. Clemson was number 1 unanimously. That was not a total surprise, but I mean, to think about 19 people voting in a poll, all 19 have the same number 1. I think that just goes to show how far Clemson is above everybody else in this league right now. I think Miami, I had them as my number 2. They ended up being number 2, but I think SMU and Louisville feels like a genuine toss-up right there. I think a lot of it is, does Miller Moss come in and have the same success that other quarterbacks have had coming into that system?
Yeah, it's really tough after Clemson. And hey, we said that about Florida State last year. So Clemson could come out and fall on their face, but Dabo's a lot different than Mike Norvell. And the way Clemson has been built is a lot different than the way Florida State's been built the last couple of years.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
And so at number 8 are your Virginia Tech Hokies, which, based on who voted in the poll, Sam, that is worse than I was expecting. I think I had them at 8 or 9, our beloved Hokies, but 8 is kind of lower than I would have thought.
I'm seeing kind of consensus with people who are making polls that's kind of where the Hokies are ending up. 7
but
to
you would
9.
have thought the homer factor would have taken over at Sons of Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think you can make an argument for them being above Florida State. I think you can make an argument for them being above Duke. I don't think you can make much of an argument of them getting into that top 5. I just don't see it, even though they beat Georgia Tech last year by 2 touchdowns, which many people forget, but in fact they did. I just don't think you can make that assumption right now. And then I think around the Hokies, like Florida State's a bunch of massive question marks. North Carolina, a bunch of question marks. Pittsburgh, a bunch of question marks. So the Hokies are kind of somehow one of the more known commodities in that second grouping of teams, which feels really weird to say with the amount of turnover the roster's had.
Well, we'll get to face Georgia Tech and Florida State and Louisville, and we'll get to prove it on the field, whether we're better or worse than those teams. Duke, we do not play this year, and the addition of Mensa is a reason why they're up so high. I think Irby had them at like number 4.
Mm-hmm.
I had Duke fairly high as well. I think I might have slotted them in the 5 or 6 spot, but VT at 8, I think part of it is, Sam, like, no one hates our team more than us.
That is true.
No one can see the flaws of your team better than you prior to hype season, because now we're going to get all positive on the team from here to August. Yeah. But from January on, Hokies fans know it hasn't been pretty on the boards, on Twitter, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make an argument for Virginia Tech being lower than that, right? Because
NC State comes to mind when I look at this list. Like, NC State could be ahead of us.
NC State's one of those teams too that, similar to Virginia Tech, I think has such like fatigue around them right now that pushed them down the mark. But I definitely think if I'm looking at different groupings for the ACC, I could put into 3 groups. 1 through 5, I think, could compete for the title. That's Clemson through Georgia Tech. Duke at 6, all the way through NC State at 11. I think those teams could jump up, jump down. They're somewhere around there. And then 12 through 17. So that's Syracuse, Boston College, UVA, Wake Forest, Cal, and Stanford. I think those 6 teams are pretty clearly the bottom 6 in my mind. And so
I'm going to leave this graphic on the screen for a second while I talk about the participants, meaning the players that came to ACC Kickoff, chosen by their coach and their staff, and what that means. Because I love reading too much into the guys that get invited, and we'll talk about our Hokies in 1 second. But for example, Syracuse brought Ricky Collins. They did not bring Steve Angelini. So that kind of gives you an idea of who's in the driver's seat for being the starting quarterback. I found that very interesting. there are teams that didn't bring a quarterback at all to ACC Kickoff. Those teams were Pitt, not a great sign after the way Holstein finished last year.
Yeah.
No QB from Stanford, no QB from Wake, and no QB from BC. And you'll notice something about those last couple teams I mentioned. They are at the bottom of this poll. So the most hilarious thing is Cal in your poll here is number 16. They brought 2 quarterbacks. so what is worse, bringing no quarterback to kickoff or bringing 2?
I definitely think bringing 2 is a bad look. Like to me, because if you're able to say, hey, we could bring 4 guys. It's like, hey, we brought our 2 offensive captains, our 2 defensive captains, and you have a young freshman quarterback or something like that, which Cal does have a 4-star plus kind of freshman quarterback coming in. Like you can make that argument when you're up on the podium and be like, these guys deserve it. They're the spokesman of our program, that kind of stuff. If you bring 2 quarterbacks, like, I don't know. That can't be a good look. And Virginia Tech has been in a situation as a program where if you don't have a consensus QB1 heading into a season, that leaves a void in your locker room. It really does. And there's always that question floating around, and it's just bad vibes, just really bad vibes for a team heading into a season.
So who did we bring, Sam? We brought Kairen Drones, Kelvin Gilliam, Jaden Keller, and Donovan Green. They were our representatives that accompanied Coach Pry down to Charlotte. And I love that Keller got invited because we've talked so much about the linebackers. I have been of the opinion that he got better throughout last year. It was the first time in his career, after getting hype every fall camp, that he turned a corner in my mind and made a huge play in the BC game, made several other big stops throughout the end of the season. And now he gets to be in a leadership role, and they chose him as a representative. I think that is a really good sign for our linebacking core.
Especially when the other guy's Caleb Woodson, who very well could have been there himself.
Mm-hmm.
So you do feel like there's a little bit of maturity and a little bit of dog in that linebacker room again, which feels good. I also thought Donovan Green was interesting. Not anything to do with Donovan Green, the person, just because bringing in a transfer before you've even had fall camp is interesting. But this is his 7th year of college football, I believe. He was in the 2018 recruiting class or something like that. So definitely an elder statesman in the locker room, very well-spoken individual. And I think he's very excited to play for Virginia Tech because as we got a quote from him that this was the school he wanted to go to out of high school, and he was only offered to play as a defensive back. So he went to Wake Forest as a wide receiver, and now he's in the orange and maroon.
Yeah, that's what you just said about Donovan Green being a transfer and getting to go. Keller was the only non-transfer. That's like a guy who played all 5 years, who's going to play all 5 years as a Hokie, played for Justin Fuente. Not very many Fuente guys left on this team, and Keller is one of them. And so that might be a reward for that as well. But let's get into what Pry had to say before we move on to the players. He started the session, and he said the roster is deeper, that they need to get more mentally and physically tough. And my guy Colby, who we've had on College Football Monday a couple different times, he's a great handicapper. He has the show, The College Experience, which I actually went on this offseason to help preview Virginia Tech over the summer. But Colby's the man, and he asked Pry the first question, and it was, you were 0-6 in games of 10 points or less. Have you addressed that in any way? And Pry said, yeah, we've talked about it a lot. And so have a lot of other people, so has everybody else, is the way he put it. And he went back to the mentally and physically tough thing. And I think that he's trying to get at Ferg. He kind of mentioned Jared Ferguson. He came up a lot throughout the day, and just that we needed to get physically more tough, physically more in shape to finish these games, and mentally more tough to believe that you can come back and finish the job. And it's a little bit of a coach speaky answer, but it's such a, what do you call that? When you can't really grab a meta thing. You can't really put it into words all the time.
Well, it's so foundational to the sport, right? It is a grind, and it is a physically taxing sport. And these guys don't go lift weights for fun. I mean, I hope it's fun for them, but if I could lift that much, it'd probably be a lot more fun for me too. But you need to have that baseline before you can even talk about offensive scheme, blitz packages, all like trick plays, like all that stuff. Like you have to have that base of strength and conditioning. Billy Ray talks about it all the time. We hear every single football player we have on here. Jonathan McLaughlin, Dwight Vick, Danny Cole when he was on there. Like every single player we've had on talks about the importance of strength and conditioning. And then when you have your head coach come out and say, we weren't a well-drilled team in strength and conditioning. Yeah, that's probably pretty important.
Yeah. And what I was trying to get is like, why were you so bad in those 1-score or 10-point games or whatever it was? It's like, you can't define it. It's intangible. It's one of those intangibles where you're like, I'm not exactly sure why, but we're going to attack all these different areas. We're going to get better physically. We're going to get better in the weight room. And we're going to try to, drill these guys into their heads. Like, you got to start fast and finish strong. I think they put that on the shirts, right? Like over the workouts. And although maybe a bit of a canned answer, I'm not sure he could have answered it any better. And I was very happy that Colby, that was the first question that Pry got. Like, the close game thing, like, why are we not winning these games?
Yeah, and it is the overarching question around Virginia Tech football right now. Yeah. And I don't think there's much of a doubt about that.
He talked about the new defensive system just a bit and what Seifkis needed in terms of personnel, why they maybe attacked certain things in the portal. We'll talk a little bit more about Seifkis a little bit later. On the two big SEC games right off the bat, he said, we have something to prove, and that was repeated. And it's a great opportunity to do so. Something that you and I have discussed in great detail.
Game.
I love that's something to prove. Like it's so true. And he said that about himself, but he said it like every guy left 2024 feeling that way.
Yeah. And it does feel like this is the first game, I think, since maybe the Miami game last year, where Virginia Tech is truly in a position as a program to ruin something for somebody else. It's such a rare position for this program to be in because of, not only Virginia Tech's status in the ACC, but also who they've gone up against in non-conference lately and how the schedule has panned out. It does feel like this is the first time where Virginia Tech can ruin somebody else's season to start the year. And the times that they've had that opportunity, you think you think about that West Virginia team that had a lot of hype. Tech played in FedEx. They won that. You think about the Florida State game that they hosted and they had blackout. Virginia Tech whooped them on that one. Sam Howell and UNC, top 10 in the country. Virginia Tech whoops them in that one. Like when Virginia Tech's in this position, they play pretty well. The issue is they're not in this position a whole lot. So to be in that position against South Carolina in Atlanta, it's probably got to feel good for a football coach to use that as some motivation. Yeah, I know he's secretly enjoying that.
Absolutely. And Fuente was the guy who got that UNC win, who got that West Virginia win, who got that FSU win. He was notoriously good in the first game of the season. We all know that. But you're right in that Pry has not been set up necessarily to have that. We were heavy favorites against ODU in his first year, heavy favorites last year going down to on the road, both road games. That's not optimal. This is a neutral site. We are the underdog. No one's expecting us to beat them, really, if you look at the larger picture of college football. And so it's nice. And it's a good position to be in for him right now. And I'm excited about that because not only could we ruin South Carolina's season by winning the first game, but I put out a reel the other day saying like we can ruin Miami's season, who has the second best S&P plus odds to win the conference and a great chance to make the college football playoff. We can ruin their season too. And I would love to be the team that does that. And Price said something to the degree of like, we're up for the challenge of South Carolina, and talked a little bit about who Coach Beamer's going to be rooting for, which he kind of echoed what Shane said, and that it's going to be South Carolina. That none of that really matters, but it's all fun media day stuff. The big quote from Pry was, "This team is the closest to the vision I have for Virginia Tech football, and we're closer than we've ever been." And I'm curious as to your thoughts when you hear that. How does it feel to you? Does it feel coach speaky? Does it feel genuine?
Yeah, it feels coach speaky, but everything that we heard from Charlotte does. So I don't think it's fair to like be like, oh, that's just coach speak, because of course it is, right? I have two main thoughts on it. My first point is he's probably right in terms of depth, because if you keep that answer going, he talks about how this is the first year that he's been here where he feels like the drop off in the too deep drink is not super strong. And I'm sorry, my koozie is like, I mean, not koozie, my coaster is sticking to my glass here.
The worst.
Yeah. But he feels like that drop off isn't super steep, and he feels like this is the deepest team he's had. And we've talked about that this offseason. He's probably right. My second thing is, I don't need you to be close to that vision of the program. I need you to be there. Like, your job relies on you being there, not close to you being there. You were close last year when you lost all those close games. You need to be there this year. And I do hope that, and this is a program that really has kind of prided itself on being almost there and knocking on the door and stuff like that. I'm like, you need to be there at this point. You're running out of time to grow the program. It's year 4. You got to win these games.
Yeah.
And so that's just I hope the mentality isn't we're getting better, we're getting better. I hope the mentality is we're winning.
Yes. The counter to that, I love that idea, by the way, is like, you shouldn't be close. You should be there. It's year 4. The counter is that if his vision is championships and being championship caliber and being expected to be championship caliber, we are not there. But it feels like close. We're closer. But if his vision for Virginia Tech is being where Clemson is, like, we're not there yet. And it's okay that this is the closest, but let's be better than last year. Let's start.
There's
there.
levels. There's levels to it. That's for sure. I mean, Clemson's at national title.
Yeah,
this year they're at that level. Virginia Tech's not close to that.
I do believe Pry to be pretty genuine, and I have a hard time with him differentiating between the genuine and the, saying things just to say them at a media day. But he hasn't, in his time, I have never gotten to the point where I'm just like, he's just blowing smoke. I really believe that Pry is genuine and truthful in what he says most of the time, and is knowledgeable enough to know that he's truthful. However, I did have a moment when I remembered Fuente's comment of, I feel better about throwing the football now than I ever have before Virginia Tech. And he was referring to Braxton Burmeister. Do you remember when he said that? I think that was at a media day.
Yeah, and that was.
He's like, I feel better about throwing the football now than I have since I got to Tech. And it's like, dude, you had Hendon Hooker, you had Sherrod Evans. Do not tell us that you feel better now with Braxton Burmeister. We know that you're lying. If you don't know you're lying, that's a problem.
That might have been the problem.
That's like, what I'm saying.
That might have been the problem.
He didn't know.
Yeah, and that's true, because when he got here that first year, the roster wasn't at a competitive level. But the issue was, I don't think they realized that until they played a few games. Like, it seemed like that staff wasn't able to realize the deficiencies in that team in fall camp.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at last year, and it's like, time and time again, we've seen that this team doesn't necessarily have a great grasp of their strengths and weaknesses. Now, there's a lot of new staff this year, so I don't think it's totally fair to put the past flaws onto Sam Seifkes and Phil Montgomery, but there is a little bit of boy who cried wolf with that, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why I said, like, you need to win games before anybody is going to really be happy with the "we're getting better" quotes.
You need to win one game against a good opponent, which we have yet to do. Like, we really have yet to do. A really good opponent we have yet to beat with Coach Pry. So absolutely, Sam. On Phil Montgomery, Pry said he wanted someone to give us and Kairen the best opportunity to reach the full potential, whether that's Kairen's potential or the team's potential, and that Monty gives us that. And he kind of made some telling comments in that with Montgomery, you're not going to be reinventing the wheel every week on offense. A proven plan that he believes in, a system you can invest in and buy into. So did we not have that? Were we constantly reinventing the wheel with Tyler Bowen? I think we saw that season after season. We kept changing.
Well, we saw game after game. I mean, there'd be some games where we looked like, old-fashioned Oregon running the spread option every single play. And then there was other games where Kairen was airing it out all the time. And it didn't really matter who the personnel that was healthy was. It didn't really matter who the opponent was. It was there's a little like magic 8-ball up there in the press box. Like, are we going to be a running team or passing team? So I think to have that knowledge going in game after game, here's what we're going to run, here's what we're good at, is something that they've been missing under Tyler Bowen.
Pry had 2 other breakout sessions that I saw, because that was all from the main session in front of the whole crowd. But when he was on the ACC network set, he talked about the lake kind of lockdown thing they did, where they went to the lake, but it wasn't to have fun. It was more to like brotherhood, workout. They put all their devices to the side. He said, like, they collected the devices and were just there and did a lot of bonding activities, essentially. And I know there are probably some cynical fans out there that are like, quit grab assing with each other and, go practice football. But the bonding thing, to me, like, I really do think that's immensely important in today's college football.
I'm thinking about the scene in Remember the Titans.
Of course.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking
Of course.
about.
Yeah. It just sounded like a really cool activity. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But he wants his players to be happy at Virginia Tech. And it not only creates a better morale on the team, but it keeps guys from leaving for bags. If you're connected to your teammates and you feel good about being at Virginia Tech, maybe you'll put however many thousands of dollars aside and say, I just want to stay. Like, I don't really want to go anywhere. I'm being compensated here. I like it here, and I'm going to stay. When he was asked a little bit about the faults of last year one more time, he said he had to do a lot of introspective, like, how do I need to get better? Do I need to insert myself in more places? And then Eddie asked him straight up, like, did you think about calling the plays? Like, you needed to call the plays. And they kind of had a laugh, and Pry's like, I thought about it on defense.
I mean, I again, Pete, this is another tally in the box of, I am shocked they didn't make a defensive coordinator change during the season. I am. It's just every single time
he's very level-headed when it comes to that stuff, and maybe it's to a fault, because he said it wasn't fair to the players because he wasn't, in those meeting rooms doing that prep. So is it really fair for me to just step in and saying I got this, or is that just too machismo?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, because I also was not in those meeting rooms. But I would say, like, it was pretty clear that he was not happy about the defensive side of the football last year. I also think he was not happy about the offensive side of the football, and maybe got bailed out a little bit by Ohio State. So shout out to the Buckeyes. I think he is much happier about who he has as coordinators this year than he was last year. That's the vibe I'm getting, because It was always with Chris Marv. It was always about, how do I shape Chris Marv into a version of myself? And with Tyler Bowen, it was always about, how does Kairen become Superman? And I feel like with Phil Montgomery, you don't need him to become Superman as much, or you have somebody who can install a system that can unlock some of his potential. So I think there's a little bit more confidence from Brent Pry with the staff he has around him this year than what he had in previous years.
Yeah, I totally got that impression. And because he said, especially on defense, he's like, I want to be able to turn that thing over, something that he knows really well, but be able to turn that over to someone he trusts. And the way he talked about Sam Seifkis, it just seems like he really does trust him. And it's clear, because it's going to be a different system than Pry's used to running. So he is putting his trust in Sam Seifkis, and he seems confident in that. Him and Monty, for that matter.
Yeah, I think Monty is one of the more proven coordinator hires Virginia Tech has made in modern times. And that sounds like hyperbole, but it's really not. Defensively with Sam Seifkis, I think you're banking on the schematic wizardry and really good at situational football, and somebody who brings some NFL IQ to the game. I think you're banking on that. It's a little bit of a risk, but even as a young coach himself, his track record is more proven than the last 2 defensive hires that they've made. And I think that's saying a lot.
We need to address what he said about Kairen's injuries. This is something that, if you're really tuned into Tech, you've heard this before, but he mentioned going into the Clemson game, Kairen had a foot injury. And then in the Clemson game, he got turf toe and the MCL. Now, you and I have heard that before, but I'm not sure everyone else had. And it kind of, tells you how much he was dealing with and how hard it was for Kairen to want to come out of the game in the Clemson game because he was trying to battle through these injuries and whatnot. But basically, Pry said his last fully healthy game was the Stanford game. And Kairen played well in the BC game. I mean, if you look at Miami, Stanford, and BC, that was a great 3-game stretch for Kairen. He was playing one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC for those 3 games. And then it all fell apart. And I think it was because the injuries just started mounting too much. But even in the BC game where I think he tweaked something, he was 14 of 18 in that game. Now, that was the game where Tootin carried the load, but Kairen was good in that one too. So getting a full explanation, a full admission on just how hurt KD was, it makes you hopeful that if he's healthy, which he does seem like, and we're going to talk about his comments soon, it's very optimistic. And the last thing I'll say about Pry, he asked Kairen how he feels about the offense, and Kairen said, "I love it." Like, and that's great to hear, because if he could have said just about anything, kids will, especially Kairen's not a kid, but they'll be honest with you. They'll say things they don't mean. And to his first reaction to be like, "I love it," and he echoes that throughout his commentary on Monty, like, that's very encouraging.
Yeah, it is. And I also think the Texas connection might be a little bit, it might be a little, he knows Phil Montgomery. Phil Montgomery knows him and before Virginia Tech. And I think that is very helpful. And as for his injuries, we knew he was pretty banged up, but I mean, Brent Pry flat out said, like, he shouldn't have played against Clemson. And I think there was, at that point in the season, there was a bit of grasping at straws going on. And it makes you wonder, like, man, what last season could have been.
I know.
Right. That's kind of all those make me feel like, credit to Kairen for toughing it out as long as he did. I think it's a very good thing that he got that off-season surgery. People will say that he should have stayed for those spring practices. People will try to insert themselves in that, whatever. I think he was pretty beat up and, like, injured, not hurt. And so for him to get that and look 100% healthy, I think he looks physically the best he's looked since he's been at Virginia Tech. And that's saying something, because he looks like a monster already. And it's all up from here. That's got to be the hope, because it pretty much rides on him being healthy for 12 games.
Indeed. Let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor and then go to some of Kairen's comments. Too Deep is brought to you by Compass Coffee. With 16 locations in DC and Northern Virginia, Compass is quickly becoming the go-to cup of joe in our nation's capital. Compass was founded by 2 Marines back in 2014, and their goal was simple: make the best cup of coffee, one that points you in the right direction at the start of your day, kind of like a compass. Right now, they're offering our listeners 20% off their order using code 2DEEPVT. That's the same code we have for Roback, in case you're interested. So go to their site or download the Compass Coffee app and load up your cart. And even if you don't live near DC, they'll ship coffee right to your door. Use code 2DEEPVT for 20% off that order. Compass Coffee. Great coffee doesn't have to be complicated. Let's do Kairen before we take our beer break, Sam. Okay, so he had a podium spot in front of everyone where he said about reaching his potential under the new coaches. He said Montgomery and him have gotten super close since he got to Blacksburg, offered him out of high school from Tulsa, but he said it was like on a bad day because Baylor and a bunch of other power schools offered on the same day. So, like, he never really looked at Tulsa too much. And then Billy Ray had a question for Kairen, stood up in front of the crowd. It's on video on ACC Network, where he asked Kairen how he's grown as a player and the advice he'd give himself a year ago. And what Kairen said, and he kind of said this a bunch of times throughout the day, just that he needs to be a more vocal leader, a better leader, and get back from the injury so that he can also lead by example. And as terms of the advice, he said, just tune out the outside noise, which is a very standard, player quote, but not a bad one, because Kairen's been getting a lot of shit talked on him over the last year.
Well, it's also, I think you talk about who are the first 2 quarterbacks that he's facing up against, I think are 2 of the most talked about quarterbacks in college football. with Lenore Sellers and Diego Pavia. So again, another Hokie in an underdog role. Something that I think people need to understand is Phil Montgomery. Yes, he has an air raid background. He will not be 100% pure air raid, right? Virginia Tech didn't hire Mike Leach. May he rest in peace. They hired an offensive coordinator that's going to play to their strengths. But this is a team that needs to get better throwing the ball. They were 108th in passing per game last year. 108th. Not good. There's not that
yards per game?
Yeah, 189.4 yards per game passing last year. And I don't care who your quarterback is. Like, you have to throw for more than that unless you're an option team. And so I think for Kairen to feel like he likes this offense, to feel like he's healthy, to feel like he has weapons, and I think he does have weapons that are pretty similar to what he had last year, if not improved in some areas. You have to see that improvement, and they seem pretty confident about it.
Yeah. He said this is the closest team he's had in his time at Tech, which goes back to the Lake lockdown and the brotherhood activities and all that kind of thing. A lot of the players kept saying that. Keller kind of harped on it too, that this is a very close team. Pry talked about it a little bit.
Yeah. Something I want to mention on that. Sorry, real quick.
Go ahead.
3 of the 4 guys that they brought to media days are within a 3-hour radius of Blacksburg, where they went to high school.
Yeah.
Donovan Green's from Mount Airy, Kelvin Gilliam's from Richmond, and Jaden Keller's from Bristol. And then Kairen has been here. This is his 3rd year at Virginia Tech, I believe. So, yeah, you have a tight-knit group, a lot of guys from this area. It does feel like there's a little more togetherness and a little less. We'll get to those comments later. But
yeah. On the offensive line, because they asked Kairen directly about this, he was like, I want no other offensive line in the country, blah, blah, blah. But he said they're doing extra meetings. They're doing extra workouts. And they straight up asked him, like, who's your best 5? And Kairen gave him an answer. He said, Johnny, Lath, Kyle, Montavious, and Tommy, which would be Tomas Remak. So that's Johnny Garrett, Lath Ganem, Kyle Altuner, Montavious Cunningham, and Tomas Remak. So it's interesting that basically, like, we know who the starting 5 is going to be. There is really no more question at right guard. It's going to be Cunningham. We had the comment from an anonymous coach saying he could be the best offensive lineman on the team. And then you had the comment from Pry on Altuner saying when they were in discussions, like negotiations with Braylon Moore and whether he should leave or not, Matt Moore said, Kyle Altuner can start. He'll be the starter at center. Like, not saying that we don't need Braylon, but we can live without him. Like, we got a starter at center in Kyle Altuner, who's only a redshirt freshman. So I thought that was some really interesting insight from Pry as well.
Yeah, first off, I would maybe take Utah's 2 first-round tackles on the team. Just pointing that out there, Kairen. I don't know if Utah's got a pretty good one. Oregon's got a good offensive line. So,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I love that he just named his starting 5. I love that. Like, stop with the smoke and mirrors. Just name the starting 5. To me, that shows a lot more confidence than just being, we got a lot of good guys competing out there.
No, I love it. Yeah.
We need 5 dudes up there who are going to play almost every snap. And hopefully Matt Moore's bringing a little bit more of that. I think the last 2 there's been 3 since Vance Vice. 3 offensive line coaches Virginia Tech have done a lot of shuffling around, and guys are kind of like, you're also a left guard, but a right guard. You can also slide into center, or one game you'll be right tackle, 2 games later you're left tackle. I would like to see some consistency there with guys. And I feel like with Moore, we're going to get that.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the roster, but Moore seems very straightforward. Like, I want big dudes that play a position. Like it's as simple as that. Give me big dudes that play a position. We're going to leave them there. They're going to get better there. And I'm very excited about what could happen on the offensive line this year. On being a leader, I think Kairen had a really good answer when he said different players need different things. Like, some guys need to be yelled at. Some guys you need to kind of take them aside and see what's going on in their lives. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said, is like, it's not across the board how you lead with all your guys. You need to kind of evaluate each guy individually. I thought that was insightful, and I like.
There's a big Nick Saban thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He also mentioned, and this was kind of a knock maybe on some of the guys from last year, that some guys were playing to get to the league versus playing for each other. And this goes back to the brotherhood thing. It clearly was a problem last year. There was some kind of issue. In addition to the strength and conditioning and just not being in good shape, there was some kind of feeling themselves guys on the team. And maybe some of the guys that are still here were like that and are changing their tune. But there was multiple players that said some guys were just trying to get to the league. And
yeah,
it's interesting because we didn't have that many guys go to the league. So.
Yeah. Which team were these guys on? I think it is when all of those guys came back to Virginia Tech. There's a big handful of guys who we thought, okay, they're either going to go to the league, they're going to come back to Virginia Tech, or they're going to go to another school. When all of those guys came back, I think we, as eternally optimistic Hokie fans, thought this is amazing. They want to be here and stuff. And that's not always the case. And I think you definitely saw some players last year who, whether it was for all 12 games or just for 1 or 2 games, kind of just didn't seem like they were totally locked in.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't afford that because Virginia Tech's not a good enough team to not be locked in every single game. So that is one thing that I hope is built through the strength and conditioning program, built through the leadership, and instilled on these guys that they need to be locked in every single game, because last year I don't think we saw that for 12 games.
Kairen, when he was on set on ACC Network, mentioned Ferg's workouts, a lot more running. They're ready for long games, finishing games. He also said he never thought about hopping in the portal because a couple of different players, I think Eddie asked him directly about it. And he's like, no, I never thought about hopping in the portal. Now, maybe that's not 100% honest. Maybe he was already getting a substantial paycheck from Tech and he was hurt last year. So who knows what the market was for Kairen, but it's nice to hear that he was committed to Tech. It always kind of seemed that way. Donovan Green might have let a little something out of the bag when they're both on set together on ACC Network. And Kairen's like, yeah, he was looking at Ole Miss and Virginia Tech. And then I knew that we were going to get him. And Donovan Green was like, well, I didn't know what you were going to do. It's like, why didn't Donovan Green know what
I mean, he might not have.
do?
I mean, Kairen was, with how Pop Watson ended last season, Kairen was one of those guys you're like, this is kind of something that happens in college football where the backup plays a few good games and the starter who was injured bounces. It does happen. But that's great to hear from him. And I really do think he took last season a little bit more personally than we've been led to believe. This was his first media since prior to the Syracuse game. He has not been in front of the media since then. A little bit of spring practice, but other than that, this was his first like formal media. I think he was he had like one quick like side media session to start spring practice, and that was it.
It did feel like we hadn't heard from him.
We have not heard from Kairen in a long time. And so I think he's been sitting in the shadows, as they say.
When he talked about the wide receivers, that was kind of a fun segment because he's up there with Green. So they kind of talked about their relationship and how they work with each other. And they said they have a great relationship. Isaiah Spencer, the late addition who came in from Jackson State.
Jackson State, yep.
They said he's an extremely hard worker. They're excited about what he can do. Takai Heath got mentioned by KD, Pry, and Gilliam throughout the day because I watched a lot of different of the breakouts and Colby stuff and all the different things, TSL, and Takai Heath kept coming up. So that is pretty cool. Cam Selden kept coming up. Pry said he's one of the fastest guys on the team. And of course, Aiden Green kept coming up. So but if you look at that, you've got DG, Aiden Green, Selden, Takai Heath, and Tucker Holloway. Another one that Pry mentioned, being 100%, putting on some weight. That's a good crew. And
you also have Brody Adams. And Chance Wiggins. There's options.
Are we forgetting somebody?
Can we include Benji Gosnell?
We can include Benji because
we'll include Benji.
One of the few holdovers from last year. Yeah.
Grandpa Benji.
Yeah. that's pretty much it, because unless you're talking about Snook Peterkin, who Donovan Green did mention Snook by name, I'm pretty sure.
Well, I mean, Robert Irby on our last show, that was his shout out of guy who's going to have a big game against Wofford. We did that little segment. He said Snook Peterson. So, yeah, I mean, they have a good amount of talent there. And I think last year they had bigger names, guys who got a little more hype with Ollie Jennings and Daquan Felton and Jalen Lane. But this year it seems like they like their core a little bit more, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, those guys just didn't really play to their potential. So they feel like if this year's crew they can be better than what we saw last year.
Finally, Kairen, just a couple name drops. Marcellus Hawkins, name dropped him. Name dropped Jonkum. And something that kept happening with Jonkum is I thought the guys were stuttering through his name because they didn't know how to say it, and maybe some of them were, but they were definitely calling him DeJunkum. Like there was like, you're pronouncing the D.
Yeah, I'm not quite. I've only heard Junkum, but it might be like David Njoku is definitely like Njoku, or David Ngasan. It's definitely pronounced the N, so maybe the D is the same.
It sounded like all of them were pronouncing it.
I'm far from a linguist. I do have like a 150-day streak on Duolingo for Italian, but other than that, I'm pretty strictly English. So do not take it from me.
We'll find out from Bill Roth soon enough.
Oh, yeah.
How you say it.
Yeah.
My main takeaways for Drones, he's healthy. His relationship with Monty seems really good, and he likes the offense. His relationship with the team and the respect that he has seems really good. The team seems close and united to accomplish a common goal. And my final takeaway was just that he knows that he needs to be a better leader. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I got from everything I heard throughout Media Day from our QB1. Let's move to a beer break, Sam. What are you drinking over there?
I actually don't have a beer. So I finished up all the what do you call them? Sam Adams summer pack. Finished those up.
I need to talk to you about that American Light review. What happened there? You didn't like the American Light?
Yes, that was gross, man. That was gross. I'm so sorry.
Gross?
I'm so sorry.
You will drink a Coors Light at a tailgate. I know you will.
Oh, Coors Light is so much better than that.
Really? I had it over 4th of July. I kind of like the American Light.
I mean, to be fair, I did have like 3 of those American Lights in maybe 20 minutes over the weekend. So last weekend that was
maybe it just wasn't hitting right.
Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. I'm doing something a little different. No beer tonight. We got a nice mojito in the Casa del Barco glass.
Still under the influence, so that's nice.
It does count.
It does
count. Fizzy. So
my sister was drinking mojitos left and right on the cruise because, of course, we had the drink package.
I'm a big mojito fan. Yeah.
I got like one. I drank a little bit of scotch, drank a little bit of bourbon. Buffalo Trace was on the boat, part of the package, so that was awesome. Drank myself some Buffalo Trace.
Whose boat was this?
Princess Cruise Lines, baby. They do it right. But I drank a lot of Alaskan beer, as I put out on Twitter or on Instagram or both. But I am having tonight the Allagash Surf House. Someone brought this to my house. We had a house party right before we left for vacation. Cool can. It's got like a little camper truck vibe on the beach. Little shout out to Corolla or something, or the beaches in Maine. I don't know if you can drive up on them, but I guess you can if the Allagash is promoting such a thing. Surf House is really good. It's a light beer, 5.5, so a little bit more than you'll get from your true like American lights. But I'd go away from saying it's like full bodied. It still seems really light, but the flavor is good. It says like a little home by the water. This lager is built for easygoing relaxation. That's exactly where I'm at, Sam. So the Allagash Surf House, I'd give this a nice solid review. I'm not going to go 4, but for a lager such as this, I think 3.5 is respectable, and I would buy it again. Even though this was a gift, I would buy this again.
Nice. Yeah, I'm going to be. I'm really tempted to sneak in some like autumnal flavors in the beer and get to that, but it's still like, I think it was like 97 today outside. So I can't do it quite yet. So the next beer run, I think, is going to be the last of the summery beers. And we'll have plenty of shows between now and kickoff to try some out.
On the boat, there were 4 Alaskan beers. There are 4 different varieties. And I kept drinking the Kolsch because it's summertime, and it was pretty warm for the first couple days. But then after it got colder, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll turn over to the amber because they had an Alaskan amber. I wasn't ready, Sam. I wasn't ready. It wasn't hitting quite like I wanted it to hit. So I put the amber down and I got myself another Kolsch. But yeah, that was a good solid brewery. I'd recommend that if you're ever up there. It's hard to get up there. You got to do some kind of special trip, but I went to like 4 different breweries throughout my stops, in addition to having a lot of Alaskan beer, and great stuff. It's amazing about this country that no matter where you go, you can find the town brewery and they've got something interesting. Like a big thing up there is the spruce tips in the beer. So like a blonde beer with spruce tip flavored. And that was something that I was big on several years back in this show. It was even in our starting, like, I think Robbie had a quote of like, find something that as much as Pete likes spruce tips in his beer, something to that degree. And I do enjoy those earthy notes. So I got myself a couple of those, but it is a beautiful country up there. And it's our country. So, So go get up to Alaska whenever you can. It was a really cool trip. All right, let's get to Kelvin's comments, because this guy brought some awesome energy.
Brought the energy. I mean, where have they been keeping this guy? What are they doing?
They needed him in front of a microphone, dude. He's awesome. Just, you can feel his presence was so fun. Like he stumbled over his words here and there, but like he like just brought so much. I'm stumbling over my words now. He brought so much juice to the operation. And so seemed like an awesome teammate to have, first and foremost. And it seems like he's definitely going to be a guy we lean on his leadership. He talked about losing APR, losing Peoples, and how much he learned from those guys. So when they kind of said, like, how are you going to fill that gap of those guys being gone? He's like, well, we learned so much from them that we feel like we can replace their production. And so that was kind of a cool way to answer it. He emphasized Coach Ferg and how his workouts are getting him mentally tougher. You could see there was a little bit of coaching that went on and like maybe what to say throughout, because they were definitely unified in their statements. But coming from Gilliam, the way he talked, that like every thought his own. Like that's the way I took it from him.
Yeah.
Like, he kept preaching that consistency as well.
Yeah. And I think, what we've heard from, people in different chats around the program and also from the players is like, they really like Ben Bell, who we didn't see a lot of in the spring. They really like him as a pass rusher. James DeJoncum, we'll figure it out. Because he seems like a guy whose name will be called a lot. And then Gilliam and Copeland in the middle are 2 guys who have been kind of waiting in the wings. Obviously, Copeland had the pretty bad injury last year, but he looks really good. I'm excited about this defensive line. I don't think we'll have too much of a step back. Will we have, APR with 1 million sacks? Maybe not. But I do think the unit of the defensive line is one that I'm personally not worried about, and in fact, am excited about going into this season.
I agree. And I said a couple episodes ago, like, Sam, is our defensive line the best position on the team? And you're like, well, could be running back, could be quarterback, but it's up there. And after hearing that and seeing some of the commentary, because what's interesting about a media day is that these guys don't have to mention their teammates. They don't have to, but they kept doing it with regard to Ben Bell and DeJoncum. They kept doing it over and over. Every single guy basically mentioned those 2 guys. And so whether it's the starters or some of the backups, we'll talk about some of the backups on defensive line when we get to our next segment. I'm very excited about what this defensive line can do. Yes, we are going to miss APR. We are going to miss Peoples, but I feel strongly about who we have, and it's not as if these guys are totally unproven. Like Joncum and Bell have produced in college football in D1. So like it's exciting. And a couple other interesting things on Kelvin before we get to Keller. He talked about looking internally at what happened last year and trying to figure out like, why did things go wrong? What can we do better? Similar to what Pry said, but it's interesting to hear a young player like him say that stuff. Like, we needed to really look inside and figure it out.
Yeah, to articulate that shows a level of maturity. And I think it is we take these losses so hard, Pete, right? But these guys, I think they do as well. And then they have to turn around and get ready for a game the next Saturday. And so I think this long off season, we talked about the fans going up and down and how their excitement level is. I think these players have really attacked this off season. And there is this sense of like personal vendetta that a lot of these guys seem to have for this season and righting the wrongs of last season. And I am really excited that mentality is here because it's something that Virginia Tech as a program just, again, hasn't really had in a while. It's always been about, building and new guys and stuff like that. So to have this like revenge underdog mentality going into the season is oddly refreshing.
It's the something to prove mantra.
Yeah.
Right? Like that they kept coming back to that phrase, is something to prove. Kelvin also said, don't focus on the opponent as much as ourselves. Like that's what we need to forget about who we're playing, focus on what we're doing and how we can improve what we're doing. Cause you're not like just thinking about what the opponent's going to do is not going to help you. And that was their biggest problem last year was themselves. So often.
That's a big volleyball thing. Keep it on your side of the net, figure out your side of the net first. And yeah, I think Tech, especially going up against a team with so much hype week one. Right?
Yeah. He indicated that they got ahead of themselves last year. Like he didn't say exactly that, but he said like, we were thinking about ACC championship. We were thinking about this. And like, they didn't think about Nashville enough. I'm sure they thought about it. I'm sure they prepared for it, but it clearly wasn't good enough because we looked like we didn't know what football was for the first half of that game. And so that was when he talked to Colby. I want to give Colby a shout out because he was down there doing a lot of interviews. I know Billy was working. Billy did some stuff with Plant the Spear. So many people down there doing a lot of cool work.
It's a lot of stuff to cover.
It really,
they were running around.
It really is. And there's a lot of people to talk to.
Yeah.
Like there are so many people to talk to, so many interesting perspectives. Like David Teal's walking around like the legend himself. He did a spot with TSL. I could hear him on some of the questions to the guys. Really cool. Just a ton of awesome people down there. All right, let's get to Keller. Good speaker. I didn't necessarily know what I was going to get out of Jaden Keller. Had never really heard him talk. Maybe a little nervous when he was at the main podium, but very articulate. And that carried through to some of the things he did in the breakout sessions. He talked a lot about learning the new defense with the other middle linebackers. And he mentioned Short and Santiago by name, guys that most of our fans probably have no idea who they are.
Yeah, that's right. So Short is a linebacker transfer from North Carolina, Santiago from Temple. Both guys have a little bit of experience under their belt. And I think, that linebacker room, we're not sure exactly what they're going to run formation wise, whether it be 2 linebackers, 3 linebackers, how much they're going to rotate. We don't know those things. So a lot of that's up in the air. I am curious to see what happens with those 2 because they have been very under the radar transfers.
Well, when I'm thinking about it, when I heard him name those 2 guys, I was like, wait a minute. Who is the backup middle linebacker? Like who's the backup at Mike? Because at one point we thought it might be Clatterball, but we
thought it might be Caleb Spencer at one point too.
Yeah. They moved Clatterball to edge essentially.
Clatterball's weird. Like we'll figure this out at fall camp.
I mean, he's a true freshman.
Let's put an asterisk on Clatterball because he had some weird recruiting movement too. Like he might have just gotten big in a good way.
He's a big dude. George Balance could be the backup middle. There was an article on George Balance a week and a half ago from some outlet. I can't remember. So yeah, it's interesting that he mentioned those 2 guys because he's talking about middle linebackers. It's like, is Short our backup middle linebacker? Because he might be.
I mean, Santiago's played a lot of football.
Yeah.
So I think you could do worse there.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. On Cephas, he said, I love picking his brain. He knows so much about football, has learned so much from him already. And learning why teams do certain things at certain times was something like he never really thought about before. Like actually not just learning your plays and going out there, but like, why would a team want to do this in this situation? So that was a theme in that these players, especially the defensive players, were like, this guy, Sam Cephas, like he's really smart. Like he really knows his stuff. He knows football and he's doing a good job at teaching us the system and football itself. And what was his last thing here? Becoming a smarter football player thanks to Sam. So that was one of the.
Oh,
things
you're welcome, Jane. You're welcome. Yeah.
On being chosen as number 25 last year, that was huge. Special teams can change the game, and this could be highly important week 1.
Yes, it will be. That's for another podcast, but yes, it will be.
Keller mentioned playing for each other, similar to other guys, caring about each other, and that in the transfer portal era, it is more important than ever to create the bonds with your guys because, this is me editorializing now, if you don't create those bonds and you don't want to play for each other, you end up like Florida State last year because things go wrong early on and no one knows or cares about each other. And then it just all falls apart. And Tech that didn't happen. Like we never truly let go of the rope in any game. Like we held tough, we battled, didn't always end good, but we didn't just completely fall apart and quit, as some people might say. And if you are creating those bonds, doing those brotherhood trips and things like that, there will be less of that, less a chance of that.
Yeah, I think he's going to be called upon not only to be a leader, but to be consistent this year. And that's something that he hasn't done yet in his career. We've seen very good games. We've seen some not so great games. And so I think there's a little bit of pressure on him to be that consistent force up the spine of the defense, because we know the defensive line will be pretty good. We know there are some good players around him, but we need him to be really good for 12 games because the defensive backs, which we haven't talked about a lot today, I think there are still some question marks there about how that's going to look, what players are going to play what positions and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be really important that defensive front seven is really, really stout, especially those first 2 games this year.
In terms of name drops, Keller talked about IBM, Flowers, and Caleb Brown as promising transfers. So always nice to hear some name drops. And both him and Gilliam, let me stress this, kept mentioning how smart Sam Cephas is. So that could be a knock on our former DC or a benefit for Cephas.
I think Sam Cephas is he keeps getting these jobs because he's a pretty smart dude. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a plus for Sam Cephas.
Finally, Donovan Green, and I don't have a ton of stuff here, so I know we're getting long in the podcast, so I'm going to move through this. He wanted to go to VT originally, but wasn't offered as a wide receiver. They only offered him as a safety, so he's happy to be back in a place that really cares about football. He had kind words for KD as a player. He said Monty wants to play fast and score a lot of points. On Keelan Adams, he said he gave him some advice just in terms of battling injury, like you have time to get right and still make the impact you want to make as a guy who's experienced a lot of injuries in Donovan Green. So I thought that was kind of cool, like mentoring a younger guy. And when asked who's the toughest to go up against on the defense, he mentioned Dante Lovett. Just he's going to give you his best rep every rep. So that was cool too. So overall, the focuses of what these guys had to say. I'll give you mine, Sam. Focus on brotherhood, focus on playing for each other, focus on the harder workouts, a lot of focus on the leadership aspect and who's becoming a leader, and then a focus on consistency, play to play and game to game. Those were the themes that I got from all of our guys at Media Day.
Yeah, strength and conditioning, football IQ. Those were kind of the 2 takeaways that I think this team has worked the most on this spring. And I think those are 2 things that lead to winning close games late, and 2 things that Virginia Tech just maybe didn't have last year in those close games.
The updated roster. This is a fun thing that I love to talk about, and we'll talk more about the roster as August goes on. But right now, they just put out the new weights, the new numbers. Sometimes there's an adjusted height here and there. We're just learning how tall some of these new guys are. Colby put out an article on 247 talking about some of the changes in weight. And so I want to shout him out. But there were 2 transfers at defensive tackle that are going to factor in this year, in my opinion. And that's Cody Heisman and Emmanuel Hickman. And they are both really big boys, Sam. Heisman, 6'4", 297 now, up, I think it was 14 pounds from a year ago. And then Hickman is 6'3", 207. So you've got 6'4", 300, 6'3", a little over 300. That's massive to have behind the two starters.
Yeah, and Kamari Copeland's also huge himself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this team, like maybe when Brent Pry, go back to one of the first comments we talked about when he was talking about this is more of my vision. I think it is is inarguable that Virginia Tech is a bigger football team than they have been for quite some time. You just look at these guys on the field; they look more like big time Division I football players because that was not always the case over the last few years.
Yeah, if you just think about the names, Joncum is huge, Gilliam, Heisman, Copeland. Hanchuk is a young guy, but he's massive. Asen Stevens is pretty big. Burgos is gigantic. Yes, that's the vision you're talking about along the lines, because I'm about to tell you about the offensive linemen. Like, they're really big too. But finishing up on D-line, the DT depth with Heisman and Hickman, along with the two starters, Copeland and Gilliam, I should say presumed starters, that's a nice little foursome. You have Nash in there too. Not quite as big as those other guys, but has the weight on him to be effective. They brought in that guy, Alhaji Fall. Like, I don't know if I've ever. Yeah. And then Laws and Christian Evans, who are young guys, but I do think they really, really like those guys. I mean, Laws, who we know is a little bit vertically challenged, he's at 293 right now. Like, that's big.
Yeah, I do think it is like it's been a concerted effort on the defensive line to be bigger. Like APR was almost a rarity for what JC Price has brought in since he's been in control of the defensive line. I mean, APR was a little more Cornell Brown type play to him, or Corey Moore. I do think there is a concerted effort to be big on the defensive line. And then offensive line as well, too. I'm curious to see. I don't know off the top of my head what these updated are. And then I have the roster on Lindy's in front of me. So I'm interested to see you rattle off some weights compared to what Lindy's had on the spring roster.
Well, like I said earlier, like, it seems as if Moore likes a heavy line. Some guys don't. Like, I know that sounds like, oh yeah, of course, every guy wants a heavy line. That's not necessarily the case. Some offensive lines, depending on the scheme they run, they want lighter guys that can move better, can pull better, and all that kind of stuff. But to me, Moore it's very simple. He wants big dudes. They have 9 guys at 310 plus. 9. That's a significant amount. And Cunningham and Garrett are both up to 318. Formerly guys that weren't all that heavy. We know that Remax like 317, 318 already. You've got Gavin Crawford in the system who's like 330. Brody Meadows is 330 or something like that. So very large offensive lineman. Now, Altuner as a center and a young guy, he's just about 300 pounds, but like he's one of the lighter ones on the team.
He's also what, 6'3"?
Yeah.
That's what he's listed at. Like 6'3" is a tall center.
Yeah, it's not bad at all to be 6'3", 6'4", and be at center. And he's 300.
He's built like a guard, more than a center. So I do think, like, I'm like, this is just, I mean, me huffing the copium right now, but like, I'm really hopeful in this offensive line, Pete. Like, I really, really am.
Well, one thing about a heavy offensive line that you can usually count on is that they will be good in the ground game. Like that, more so than the pass game. It's easier to block when you weigh a lot of pounds. Now, pulling and getting in front of an edge rusher when you're on 3rd and 10, that's more challenging. But if you're just trying to run the football on first down, you got a bunch of big fat guys in front of you, that's good. Like, that's a good thing.
Especially when your quarterback is 6'2", 240, you know?
Yeah. Right. Exactly. You want to do some tush push? Like, I'm all for it behind this offensive line. But speaking of weight, our running back, who is only about 5'9" on a good day, 222 pounds, is Terrion Stewart, Sam. That's a bowling ball right there.
Oh my goodness. In the words of Bud Foster, a bowling ball of butcher knives.
Yes. He really is. Like, I always thought Tootin was kind of a muscled up running back because he was not so tall, but like had muscle and was still shifty and fast. Terrion Stewart is like Maurice Jones-Drew. Like he is built like that.
Oh, that's a throwback. I wonder how much of our audience knows Maurice Jones-Drew.
I certainly hope enough.
Jags uniforms, yeah.
And Tootin's about to play for those very Jags. So
yeah, yes, he is.
But yeah, I'm excited about what Terrion Stewart at that 222, and I just love those 3 2s in a row. Also, like it's just nice and symmetric. I'm into that. Wide receiver Isaiah Spencer. We talked about him and what Kairen and them had to say about him, but he's up 11 pounds from his listed weight at Jackson State. He's now 6'2", 196. That's a really nice size wide receiver. In terms of the freshman, Cameron Sparks comes in at 211. That's a big freshman wide receiver, really big. Linebacker Noah Chambers, 6'2", 220. He may be able to contribute early. And when it comes to the freshmen, like having the weight on you is such a step in the right direction in terms of playing time. And the last one in regards to that is Sheldon Robinson, 6'2", 203 at safety. That is a playable weight right away.
Yes. Yeah, and you normally don't get that from defensive backs. It is really, really rare that a defensive back has the size to come up and tackle as a freshman. Usually those guys go to Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ohio State. So that's a really good get for Virginia Tech, I think.
And a highly rated recruit too. So
yes,
if we didn't have 800 safeties on the team, I would think like he'd be getting his nose in there. Think about the last 2 years. We've put out Quentin Reddish and Mose Phillips, like throwing them right into the fire. If we still had those depth concerns, we'd be seeing that from Sheldon Robinson.
Yes. Yeah.
Hopefully we don't have to rely on him so much, but we'll see. In terms of number changes, Coney is switching to number 4. Christian Williams, also number 4. Don't put them on special teams at the same time. Let's not.
Pete, we were having such a positive conversation. I will drive to Blacksburg tonight to change their jersey.
2 4s on the field. Priester switching to 72, all but solidifying his move to offensive line because he was 95 before, and now he's 72.
I'm sorry, I think I misspoke earlier. Priester is the player from Hampton.
Oh yeah,
Fall is from Georgia State or Georgia Southern.
Elijah Fall. He's got it's hard. It's
Georgia State or Georgia Southern.
Because Cunningham came from one of those too.
Cunningham came from Georgia State. Oh gosh, Pete.
I think it's Southern, but I'm not sure now.
It's one of them. Anyways, he plays for Virginia Tech now, and that's what matters, Pete.
Finishing this thing off, I quizzed you guys on this earlier. How many players do you think Virginia Tech has on their roster that are juniors and seniors? And you guessed 42. Well, you would be right in terms of guys going into their 4th or older year. But in terms of actual juniors and seniors, it's 50. So we have 42 guys that have already played 3 years of college football, and they're going to be seniors or redshirt juniors. Then we have 8 additional true juniors. So 50 upperclassmen, as they used to call them, because now there's upperclassmen and there's upperclassmen these days. But 50, Sam, that is older than I think a lot of people think this team is after losing a lot of experience last year.
Yeah, and it points to how quickly you can turn over a roster in modern college football. We talk about the negative side of the transfer portal. One of the positive sides is you can bring in leadership to help your team, and that's definitely something that's happened this offseason.
For sure. So 50 juniors and seniors. I think I have 28 seniors or graduates. So that's a lot of freaking seniors. I remember one of the years under Fuente, we had like 6 seniors. I'm not even kidding. Like it was like 6 or 8 or something. It was insane. This is 28. Now I know the rosters have changed a little with the 105, but we've always had extra non-scholarship guys on the roster. And I don't remember too often getting into the high 20s with seniors and graduates.
I believe the entire 2 deep, one final drink on that, the defensive front 7 is all either junior or senior or graduate. There's no freshmen or sophomores, I believe, in the 2 deep of the defensive front 7.
No, I think you're right. I'm looking at the roster right now. Yeah, because Caleb Woodson's a true junior, Bass is a junior, Spencer's a junior, Santiago's been around, Short, Balance. Balance, I think, is technically a redshirt sophomore, but that's 3 years in the program too. So anyway, a lot of experience on this team. Maybe it changes some of the minds out there on what to expect from these Hokies. But Billy said it to me today. He's like, starting to get excited, starting to think we could win 8 games. And it's so true, man. It comes around every year.
Man.
And I absolutely, this is like the best. It's the worst month and the best month all at the same time.
Yeah, it's these like 2 weeks where like you haven't hit fall camp yet, and then you hit fall camp, and it's like it's agonizing. I want that game in Atlanta to happen, but I want to enjoy it, and we have so much to learn about this team over the next few weeks.
Absolutely. One last final talk about our sponsors. 2 Deep Hokies Under the Influence is brought to you by Roback. I mentioned the code earlier, 2 Deep VT. We've talked about them for years, but you can still grab some of the best gear out there. They keep coming out with new polos. They've got the hoodies. They've got the quarter zips. So go to Roback, load up that cart, use code 2 Deep VT to get 20% off your first order. Sam, that's pretty much all I got for the pod. Are there any final notes that you have on your end?
No, I would just say we are continuing to ramp up the website, sonsofsaturday.com/VT. If you just search Sons of Saturday, it'll be the first thing that pops up. We have a explanation for all of how many teams are in the ACC now, 17 or something like that. Our new football beat reporter, Ryan Castle, formerly football player, Christopher Newport University. He's going to be covering the team for us this season on the website. He wrote kind of a little preview blurb for all of the teams. So if you need a good catch up, that's a great place to go get that. We have some awesome interviews coming out, some awesome feature stories coming out throughout the rest of the month. It's going to be a really awesome season on the website. So make sure you're checking that out.
Sons of Saturday is no longer just a podcast. It's been more than a podcast for quite a while. Our website is cranking out some good material, and you got to check it out. All of our podcast like articles and the links to all the different forms of it can be found on the website as well. If you're ever trying, where can I find this podcast? Go to sonsofsaturday.com. You'll see 2 Deep on the podcast tab, or just right up on the screen if you're on a desktop. But make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, 2 Deep, longest running Hokies podcast. That's us. Under the Influence is our main show. We will be bringing back college football Monday in late August. We will be doing some more memory lanes here and there. Those are all shows you can find on the 2 Deep feed. But of course, Hokies Under the Influence, the drinking the beers together, that's our main show. And we're going to be doing it for our 11th season coming up. Now that Sam's here, helping me out, it's going to be better than ever. I can't wait for 2025, man. It's
what if, I mean, by rule, Virginia Tech can go 12-0 this year.
It's mathematically, it's possible.
Yes.
But let's not get that hyped up. Now, until next time, when we are going to be covering the ACC slate, go Hokies.
Go Hokies.